My next guest for tonight, her time, today, my time, is Berkley Bryant. Now, Berkley Bryant from South Carolina was crowned Miss Volunteer America 2025 on June 22nd. As a national winner, she serves as a national ambassador for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and a national brand ambassador for the Salvation Army. During the competition, she earned preliminary fitness and wellness and talent awards, winning over $50,000 in scholarships. In her first 3.5 months, she traveled 19,000 miles, visiting 15 states, from modeling for Sherri Hill to serving in Harlem soup kitchens and attending Capitol Hill meetings. Berkley, 23, graduated with honors from Clemson University, where she was Miss Homecoming 2022, a member of Tiger Dance's Alpha Delta Pi and the Sales Innovation Program, and served as a university tour guide. She has been the top fundraiser for the St. Jude Walk / Run, a 5-time recipient of the Presidential Volunteer Service Gold Medal, and volunteered for organizations like Susan G. Komen, Ronald McDonald House, Boys and Girls Club, and Special Olympics. The South Carolina House of Representatives passed a resolution honoring her leadership and commitment to volunteer service. As a DARE, or Drug Abuse Resistance Education Ambassador, she is expanding this relationship nationwide during her reign as Miss Volunteer America. All right, Berkley, I am now out of breath. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for coming on. Let's give a shout out to our mutual friend, Haley Hurst, for connecting us. I know you were just on an interview with Haley. How did that go?
It was great. It was really good to catch up with Haley. Fun fact, I met her at Miss Volunteer America when I won. She was attending finals and came up to me in the Queen's Ball and said, "Hey, by the way, my name's Haley and I'm really interested in competing." And then flash forward, I end up attending Miss Virginia Volunteer where she ended up winning the state title. So thanks to Haley for connecting us. I really appreciate it.
How hard was it to twist her arm to compete?
Honestly, not that hard. I mean, that night I talked to her again. So Queen's Ball, if anyone understands what the Queen's Ball is, it's basically after the winner is crowned, everyone goes to that room. You're congratulated. There's lots of pictures. I mean, I can't even remember most of that night. So the fact that I remember the conversation is a good thing, but I don't remember it taking too much to convince her.
Okay, so you had that syndrome where when you win your big crown, you kind of black out. Is that what happened to you?
Yes. So when I was crowned, going through my head, I think, and so I don't really remember what I was thinking in the moment. I remember what I was thinking when I walked down the runway, but the moment when I was crowned, you do black out. I think that's a real thing.
Well, why don't we, on that subject, as I told you, I have a few videos here. Why don't we go through the crowning video? Let me just play it through. We'll watch it once, and then I'll get you to talk us through maybe. If you can remember what you were thinking when it happened, you may not be able to. But let me just play it through here for those of you who haven't seen it. Here we go.
Congratulations, Berkley. Take the runway. Ladies and gentlemen, here is your new Miss Volunteer America.
Wow. So they announced the first Alyssa Gallagher, who was Miss Pennsylvania Volunteer. Okay, Hannah, that was really special. Oh,
Okay, now you promised you weren't going to get emotional.
Okay,
so...
I'm not. I know. Okay, I'm gonna keep it together. So I remember when this song played. So this song, if you listen to the words, it's called "I Believe," and it talks about how you've had so many dreams before, and now you finally realize you've waited your whole life, and now this moment's arrived. Like, honestly, there couldn't have been a more perfect song for my journey, and I think that's when the tears really started flowing. But I remember being backstage. We were all in the top 5, and that's when the tears started, was before we even walked on for crowning. And I think there was just such a sense of relief because there's all the work's been done. You've worked so hard to get there, and now it's about to happen. It's completely out of your hands. The competition's over, and to think I pointed over at my mom, who that's what that point was. But
Yeah.
I pointed over at my family. They've been with this journey for forever, and it was really special to be crowned that night in Jackson, Tennessee.
I often say that every pageant needs like a tissue or a Kleenex sponsor because I mean
Yeah.
there can be a lot of crying throughout the night. I mean, obviously this is, oh, I don't want to say obviously, but you mentioned the hard work and the importance of your family being there. I'll just take the video down for a sec. Can you give people an idea as to your history in pageants? So I had a
Yeah.
stalk of your social. That wasn't your first pageant, obviously.
Yeah.
Why don't you
As
talk
they
us through
say,
how you got involved in pageantry?
not my first rodeo, I guess you could say. But no, so my journey in pageantry started when I was about 13 years old, and so it's been quite a long time coming. I'm 24 now. I was 23 when I was crowned, just had a birthday, but this 10-year journey really started because of dance. So I'm a dancer. That was my talent for the competition, and I remember having a dance teacher tell me that I should do this pageant because they have a talent and you can win scholarship money. And I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. I'll go for it. And so 13-year-old Berkeley with no fear, absolutely no fear, just stepped on the stage and happened to win the thing. It was like a local pageant, happened to win the thing on accident. And my parents are going, what in the world have we gotten ourselves into? And so fast forward many years later, and I got the bug. And again, scholarships was another reason why I competed. I knew I wanted to go to a 4-year university, and for me, it wasn't going to be easy to pay for college, and I knew I was going to have to pay for that at some point in my life, whether it was through student loans or whatever. And so the scholarship piece of pageantry really stood out to me, coupled with the service. So, fun
Mm.
fact, my dad was in the military for 20 years, and so, with that, service was always a really big part of my life. And the servant leadership aspect of these women who I looked up to for so many years is why I stayed in pageantry and why I ultimately ended up pursuing Miss Volunteer America, because that's really exactly who I always looked up to. And my mom competed in Miss Texas back in the day. I mentioned earlier that was who I was pointing at, and I'm sure we'll get to talking about my mom here in a little bit, but she was also a big reason as to why I competed in pageantry.
So you've been in this industry 11 years now. Does
Yes, I guess
the,
it's
the,
11 now because I just had a birthday, so it's crazy to think that this has been that long of a journey, but safely can say I think this was the best way to end the journey, that's for sure. So going out as a national title holder is just unreal. Never imagined it.
I mean, it's been half your life, pretty much. Have you ever thought of
Pretty
that?
much, I have. And, I talk to my parents about this a lot because think about the time, the energy, the finances that have been poured into this. It's really been a commitment that's
Mm.
been half of my life. I want to say a lifetime commitment, really, because if you think about it, my middle school years, that's when all of this started for me. And so I knew then that if I was going to stick with this, that it was going to be a huge part of my life, and I was going to have to make a lot of sacrifices socially along the way to ultimately make these dreams come true. And it ended up working out, and I'm so grateful that I did.
Have you given any thought to who you would be today if you hadn't gotten into pageantry back at the age of 13?
It's hard, honestly, because a lot of people think that Berkeley who is in pageants is different than the Berkeley who you see every day. And I can honestly say that, and you can ask my friends and family this, the Berkeley you see here is who you're getting. I mean, I am who I am because of my involvement in pageantry. I will say, I mean, just the communication skills, the leadership skills, the experiences I've had have really cultivated who Berkeley is. And so it's kind of hard to picture
Yeah.
what my life would be like without it. But I always had dreams of going to Clemson University. And so I think you mentioned earlier some of my bio there in terms of the experience I had. And a lot of that was outside of pageantry, if you will. And so that was a huge part of my life. And I think some of my defining moments certainly were had there too.
Now, are you from South Carolina originally?
I was actually born in San Antonio, Texas, on an Air Force base called Lackland Air Force Base. Yep. So I've bounced around a good bit. Again, being from a military family, that was a huge part of growing up. And so I lived in San Antonio, Texas, Montgomery, Alabama. Also had some time in Colorado Springs, Colorado, when my dad was working at the Air Force Academy. He graduated from there, and then finally kind of found home in South Carolina because both my parents are from here. So it was always a plan after my dad retired from the Air Force to come back to South Carolina. And so, again, it was a dream for me to go to Clemson. And so to think that we were moving back and I was going to get free, or excuse me, not free tuition, in state tuition, not free, definitely not free. Now it's free because of scholarships, but the in state tuition made a big difference for sure.
And I've interviewed one particular friend of mine, a very good friend of mine from South Carolina. And me being from Australia, I don't know much about the differences between states. I've spent some time in Texas. I've been to a few states in America. Can you just tell the people watching, in case they don't know, a little bit about South Carolina?
Sure. So in South Carolina, you have the beaches, but you also have the beautiful mountains. And I feel very blessed to be in the upstate of South Carolina. So I am in kind of the part closest to the Georgia border, if you will.
Mhm.
And so we are surrounded by lakes. I grew up with my grandparents having a lake house. And so I was always on the water. I water skied growing up, but we also had the beach that was about 3, 4 hours away from home. And so a lot of people are familiar with Charleston, South Carolina. I don't know if you've heard of Charleston, but that's about 3 hours from me. A lot of my friends live there now, moved there post grad, and so many beautiful places in South Carolina, and we're blessed to have the best of both worlds, in my opinion.
I think my friend is somewhere near Spartanburg, if that sounds correct. She
Yes.
says that she lives basically near a swamp. I don't know if she's exaggerating, but that's what she said. Somewhere near Spartanburg. Let me just ask, let me clarify something. Now, I have another good friend, or several good friends who live in Georgia. You also mentioned Georgia. And Georgia is known as a peach state. Now, my South Carolinian friend took a bit of an exception to that because she said that South Carolina actually has better quality peaches and produces more of them. So would you care to weigh in on this debate anywhere?
So I'm not the most passionate peach talking person you'll talk to, so I probably won't give that bias of an answer, but I have heard the saying that South Carolina's peaches are actually sweeter. I will say my grandpa used to make peach ice cream, homemade peach ice cream, and it was the best. And so that's like one of my core memories growing up. I will always remember the peach ice cream. So, yes, peaches are good in both Georgia and South Carolina. I'm not going to hate on either peach.
That's fair enough. That's a very diplomatic answer. Your childhood sounds fascinating. You just talked about homemade peach ice cream, which I used to do growing up. I love making homemade ice cream. It just hits
Yes.
differently. But then you mentioned that your father was in was it the army or was it
Air
the Air
Force.
Force? Air Force, right? And I was studying to be an aeronautical engineer. I love airplanes. I'm fascinated with the American fighter jets, in particular F-16s, F-15s.
Oh,
Now, obviously, the more advanced ones. And then you mentioned that your mum previously competed in pageants. I'm just curious, as a general question, what was your childhood like growing up? Because there must have been a lot of moving. You must have seen a lot of things, had a lot of experience. What was that like?
so many different experiences. And again, in the variety of places that I lived, San Antonio, Texas, Montgomery, Alabama, I mean, even just those two places in themselves, if you know anything about the demographics and the people and the environment you're surrounded by, I mean, at from age 0 to 7, that was my life. And so then moving to Anderson, South Carolina, I was not surrounded by as much diversity in terms of groups of people and the environment that I was surrounded by. And so it was a very interesting childhood. And I will say, growing up, I didn't appreciate it as much then as I do now. And I think it's kind of a beautiful thing to look back on because a lot of people say, "Oh, the military kid lifestyle isn't for everyone," but they say that while they're in it, and then
Mm.
fast forward, I'm in my 20s and I'm so appreciative that it pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and I'm so appreciative of different communication styles, different backgrounds. I mean, just the wide variety of people I was surrounded by and had to work with every single day is has set me apart for the workforce, for working with people as a national title holder. I mean, it's really just set me up for success thanks to how I grew up as a child.
Can you just give me a bit of background on your parents? Because the stereotype, and this is interesting because Haley's father, I think he used to be he's an
He
ex-Navy
was a Navy
SEAL.
SEAL, yes.
So I'm beginning to see a pattern here, but obviously the stereotype with having a father who's been in the Air Force, been in the military, would be that, you know, he's very disciplined, and obviously that you have to be
Very.
disciplined if you're in the Air Force. What was that like? Was that stereotype true for yourself growing up?
100%. 100%. And so my father has certainly instilled in me the values of uh, integrity first. I think that was one of the first Air Force core values. So integrity first, service before self. That was another one that we grew up on, my brother and I. And then excellence in all we do. Those were kind of the
Mhm.
ways that we live. Those are the Air Force core values. And so that was me at 5 years old. I was learning the Air Force core values. I was always 15 minutes early everywhere I went. I always made my bed. I mean, just all of the things that he grew up knowing how to do because of the military lifestyle. Myself and my older brother, who's 6 years older than me, had the privilege and blessing of kind of getting that training, if you will. And so a lot of times it can be a little bit much, I will say, especially especially coming into pageantry. There's a lot of people who they see Ron Bryant coming and they're like, "Oh, there's Berkeley's dad. He's very military style in how he does things. He'll tell you like it is, that's for sure." But then you have my mom. Okay, so let's talk about my sweet mom. My mom is not that way, and I feel like I'm a perfect blend of both, if that makes sense. And so my mom, like I said, competed in Miss Texas back in the day. She twirled baton, actually. She was a feature twirler in college. She didn't wish that upon me by any means. She was like, "Berkeley, you don't have good enough vision for that. You cannot throw a baton to save your life. Like, we're not doing that." And so there comes dance. But my mom is very special to me. She's so compassionate. She's does talk about service before self. I mean, she put her kids above everything in her life, and I hope to be that one day too. But I'm so thankful to have had both of them because again, they're so different and come from completely different lifestyles. But I talked about earlier how I was pointing in the crowd, and it was funny, and I'll kind of tell the story about this. My parents actually ended up sitting on the front row at Miss Volunteer America, and there was a reason for that. That was not was not intended. That's normally not how things would roll. But my mom actually was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer when I was a senior in college. And so unfortunately the last 2 years have been pretty rough on her and as well as my family. And so that's something that not a lot of people know about our situation, about me, about my mom, about my family. But it's, again, something that I felt like I couldn't really share on social media because people would think that I was almost using that as my story. But at the end of the day, it's her story, not mine. She's a very private person. I feel very blessed now that we've talked about it a lot, and she's comfortable with me sharing more about it, especially now with such a huge national platform and even international platform now. It's really special to be able to share that journey and how far she's come. And so there was a point where I didn't know if she was going to be at Miss Volunteer America. And so to think that we've been through this long journey together, and then for that to be the result was, beyond dreams. I mean, we just had no idea that that would be how that week ended up.
I mean, that's I'm very sorry to hear that because there's always a special bond, obviously, between a young woman and her mother. And you know, I wish her and yourself all the best. I do have a lot of respect for someone who handles something like that privately. You said she's a very private person, and I think in this day and age, there's a bit of a tendency, and I don't know if you agree with this, a bit of a tendency, like if you stub your toe, to make a huge, noise about it and say, "Oh,
Right.
woe is me," and then complain. And I always have a lot of respect. I assume your dad is the same, coming from the Air Force. That you just got to knuckle under and deal with it. I
Right.
mean, we've got the hand that the Lord dealt us for whatever reason,
Right.
and sometimes it's great, often it's not. But that's kind of the beauty of life. But yeah, that must be tough.
Right. And I think dealing with it behind closed doors is is a tough battle in and of itself, because like you said, people think that, oh, we need to toughen up,
Mm,
and just take care of it, and deal with it as you will. But for me, it was hard, because I feel like I share so much of my life on social media and with the public in pageantry. And so that was a tough mental battle for me to figure out how to best cope and deal
yeah.
with what had just been dealt to my family. And so I ended up being able to come to terms with the fact that, this is her journey, not mine. And
Yeah.
that's what I've stuck with, and knowing that the good Lord understands that. And I'm very blessed to have family and friends that have been so supportive, and just, it's kind of been beautiful to see so many
Mm.
people come together to support her and my family.
Yeah, there's a big temptation for us to look at our follower count or our likes count and think better about ourselves. But my mum recently went through a health scare too, and I can tell you that when you're in the hospital or you get that news, and your heart drops, doesn't matter what your Instagram count is, like, or TikTok or whatever it is. At that point, you really find out who your friends are. You learn to value your family more, I think, if that's possible. And you realize that there are certain people who are actually there for you. There are a lot of people say, "Oh, you need anything, let me know." But there are only a few of those people who,
Yeah.
when it hits the fan, so to speak, they're
Hmm.
really there for you. And so maybe the bright side of it is that you find out who your friends and family really, really are. But it can be a very scary time. Can I just ask, how did you find the balance? Because me, obviously, I share a lot on social media as well, but my parents don't have social media. And even my brother, who's about the same age as me, he used to have Facebook, then got rid of it because he doesn't want it. How hard was it for you to find that balance where you sort of feel like you have to let people into your life because you want to be authentic, but at the same time, it's like, hey, not only is there a private side of me, but also it's not my place to share other people's lives. That's their call. Was that a struggle for you?
It really was. And so the way I handled it was probably not, it wasn't the best every day, right? Like, there was always a challenge that presented itself. If I was, let's say I had an appearance, I was going to a school visit, but I also had gone to take my mom to chemo earlier in the day. It's really hard to kind of change
Yeah.
change faces, if you will. And so I think that those lessons, honestly, are kind of what helped me cope with the fact that I wasn't posting about it on social media, and just understanding that, look, this is my personal life, not only mine, but my mom's. And then I was also Miss South Carolina volunteer, where I was then able to invest in these young people to believe in themselves and believe in their dreams. Like, it was a beautiful combination, and being able to come home to my mom and be able to share those stories of inspiration and show her photos and videos. And that's kind of where I found the beauty in the situations. And I think finding the beauty in the situations is how I got through each and every day, especially at the beginning. And then now, being on the road so much as Miss Volunteer America, traveling the whole country, it's definitely been more of a FaceTime relationship, if you will. And so I still show her pictures. We still, talk about the day and the visits, but it's definitely changed a lot of things in how our relationship works, but also with followers and things like that.
Do you happen to know the story of how your father and mother met?
Yes. Okay. Fun fact. They are 4 years apart. My dad is older. And so it's funny, because they actually grew up in the same hometown in Iva, South Carolina. So small, so small. And then both went off and then came back, and they got set up on a blind date by my mom's sister and my dad's family friend. So they literally met on a blind date. How cute is that? Right? I mean,
That sounds like a made up story. That's very
I
convenient, but
promise.
that's like
I
fairy
promise
tale.
it's not made up. Buddy and Faith set them up. His name is Buddy and Faith. They set him up. It was around Christmas time, and then 2 years later, I think it was, they ended up getting married, and the rest is history. So
I
pretty
think
cool,
I'm
huh?
going to tear up soon. I mean, your dad name being Buddy and your mum's name being Faith. I mean, that's a beautiful name in
Sorry,
and of
Buddy
itself.
and Faith are the people that set them up. My mom and
Oh,
dad's
okay.
name. Sorry, my mom. I didn't
That's
say
all
that
right.
correctly. My mom and dad's name are Mia and Ron. So not as cute,
Okay.
but still a fun
No,
story.
I mean, it's different. I'm not going to say you got the better name. No, I was just thinking if it's Faith, that's like fate. Can I just ask, Because has your dad seen the Top Gun movies?
Yes, absolutely.
What's his opinion on them, given that he actually served in the Air Force?
I think
What was
he
his opinion on the,
appreciates
yeah?
he appreciates it, right? Like he appreciates the effort that's that's put into these movies. But also you have to remember my dad flew a B-52 bomber. So he flew the
Oh,
biggest plane in the Air Force, and so it was a totally different life. And then he also was a flight, I guess he taught in flight school, so he was a flight instructor, I guess you could say. And so he did that for a majority of his career. So kind of just had a very different experience, I guess.
it's so funny because I could geek out over different planes for a long time. As I said, I was studying to be an aeronautical engineer, and I had photos of all these planes up on my wall. And the B-52. I mean, it's an absolutely massive plane. But anyway, we're not here to talk about planes. Why don't we go back to the pageant? Now, you mentioned your mum got you into dance and said you weren't allowed to baton. Well, I understand the batons are quite heavy, and if you drop them on your head or your feet, it can hurt a fair bit. But why don't you take us through this? Because this is not something that I'm familiar with coming from Australia. So can you explain to the audience what's going on here? What is this called? Is this tap
That
dancing
is
or is
tap
this
dancing.
clogging?
That is
Tap
tap dancing.
dancing.
I'm glad you asked that question because there is a difference. So tap means that the tap, which is the metal piece, and the shoe are together, and there's not air between them. Clogging, there's movement, so it's a little bit louder, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I've been tap dancing since I was 3 years old, which is crazy. I've taken all styles of dance, but tap has always been my favorite. On the Miss Volunteer America stage, I knew I had to dance to Blue Suede Shoes. It was always one of my favorite songs growing up. And honestly, I was told in the past that Blue Suede Shoes would be too expected or too typical of a tap dancer to perform. And so to think that I did that on the Carl Perkins stage and danced to Blue Suede Shoes. So there is a connection there. So Elvis Presley obviously sang the song, but Carl Perkins composed it. And so being able to be in that historic venue and dance to Blue
Yeah.
Suede Shoes and win a talent, I'm the first tap dancer to win a national title since Mallory Hagan, which was Miss America 2014. And so, fun
Wow.
fact, we actually had the same choreographer, Shay Sullivan, who I've known again since the beginning of my pageant journey. She's based out of New York City. And so, shout out to Shay Sullivan for choreographing that piece for me and being a huge part of my dance journey for sure.
How long was your number in total? Because this is only a clip here. Like, how
Right,
long
yeah.
was it, and how long did it take to actually prepare this?
So the number was created in December and then I performed it in June. So I really hit the studio hard for 6 months, which I can learn a dance and perform it the next week. It's not that it needed that long, if that makes sense. It just
Yeah.
for me, it made the most sense to get the choreography in December and then I worked really hard on it. It was pretty difficult obviously because it is 90 seconds, and so not only difficult in terms of technique but difficult in terms of stamina. And so being able to do, because you can run a mile easily, but doing a
Yeah.
dance in 90 seconds, it's a completely different when that 90 seconds is jam packed of movement and you don't stop. It's kind of crazy. People don't really understand how much stamina it takes to do that. So I would say about 6 months is how long it took for me
Wow.
to get to that point.
Now, I coached as a head tennis coach at an all-girls school near here, and we worked quite closely with some rhythmic gymnasts and some dancers as well. And I've always had an appreciation for how you guys take something that's insanely difficult, and then not only do you make it look easy, but in this case, you can see in the video you're smiling the whole time. Now, I will tell you, as a tennis player, there's no pressure on me to have to smile when
No
I'm hitting my
smiles
shot,
needed, right?
or to make it look easy. But can you give people, because you mentioned like how much stamina, and I'm just watching your footwork because I'm looking at this and going, a lot of stamina there. There's a lot of movement, and obviously you have to kind of make it look effortless, make it look fun. But just looking at your footwork, do your shins hurt? Do your feet hurt? Do your knees hurt? Because that sort of movement, I'm going, I get shin splints doing that.
Yes. So my ankle, so if you this clip doesn't show too much of it, but I do a lot of work on my toes.
Yeah.
Right there, you can kind of see me
Yep.
going
Yep.
over
Yep.
my toes, but there's a point where, you're on both toes. And so I would say ankle strength is probably the biggest thing in tap dancing, but it takes a lot of overall strength and a lot of athleticism to do some of these things. And it's kind of funny, tap dancers often don't get as much credit as they deserve, hence why
Yeah.
it's very uncommon for a talent winner to be a tap dancer. And so honestly, I don't know if a single judge of mine had tap dance background, if that makes sense, but I think they were entertained. And a lot of times people don't understand that the talent portion of the competition, do you want to see the number again? Is usually what the question should be when you're judging a talent. And so I'm hoping that the reason that I won this talent award at nationals was because of that, and I hope to put smiles on people's faces. That's the goal. Again, I was a dancer in college. I danced at Clemson University, so I danced in front of 80,000 people on game days. And so you really
Wow.
just put on a show and have fun with it, because at the end of the day you're there to make people happy, and that's what the talent portion is to me.
And can you tell me a bit about the outfit? Because as the more I'm watching this video again and again, your work is amazing. But this, tell me about this outfit, because this outfit looks
Yes.
absolutely stunning.
Yes, thank you so much. So I designed that outfit with Jonathan Kane. So Jonathan Kane is based out of Nashville, Tennessee. He was on Project Runway. He is very nationally, internationally acclaimed. So we love him so much. But Jonathan made this pantsuit for me, and I knew the vision I wanted. I wanted the costume to be silver, and then for my shoes to be
Yeah.
blue so that the shoes stood out a little bit. But obviously the costume is pretty smashing too. It's pretty out there because of how sparkly it is, but I love a sequin. I mean, come on, who doesn't love some sparkle on a talent costume? And so I actually was able to kind of come up with the design myself, and I showed it to him, and then he sketched his professional version, because my sketch version definitely was not very good compared to his. And so he did his professional one, and it was exactly what I ended up with. So I was very grateful for him.
Is this outfit still hanging up in your closet somewhere? Do you still have it, Berkeley?
Of course, that thing is not going anywhere. It's gone to state pageants with me. A lot of state pageants have had me perform this number. They've been wanting me to dance, which is really special. So I think it's so funny. Allison DeMarcus, who's our national director, and hopefully I get to speak on her a little bit at some point. She's amazing, by the way. But fun little fact, she was like, "All right, Berkeley, do we have another dance that we can do? Because I feel like people are just gonna get a little tired of blue suede shoes." She didn't say it like that, but and at the end of the day, I knew exactly what she meant, because I am going to be doing blue suede shoes a good bit, and so I do have several other numbers that I'll do throughout this year. But blue suede shoes will always have a special place for me.
I was just going to ask, and we'll get onto your national director in a second, but just going to ask, since you have this, have you ever just like worn this to go for a walk down the street, or, go to a burger joint, go to a diner, and just, wear this outfit and just see what people's reaction would be?
I mean, what if I just showed up at a restaurant in this? I mean, just like a
Yeah.
night out, it would be quite something. I think I would definitely get some stares. Hopefully, someone would want a picture of it, because it would be pretty memorable.
I mean, I've seen a lot of outfits in my time doing this, but for me to know the name of the designer, and I don't know many designers, but that obviously speaks to how well known the designer is. I could watch this all day, because there's so many different things to appreciate. But let's get on to your national director. So, tell me a bit more about the system itself, and then obviously that's tied into your national director as well.
Sure, yeah. So for those watching, I'm the current Miss Volunteer America, so I'm the third national title holder. The Miss Volunteer America organization is basically a nationwide service-oriented scholarship program that seeks to provide young women across the country those scholarship opportunities and extraordinary experiences that really will set you apart for success, and set you up for successful endeavors in the future. And so at the end of the day, Miss Allison DeMarcus, who is our CEO and founder, really wanted to empower these young women. And so that's exactly why I got involved. And as Miss Volunteer America, I received a $50,000 scholarship, which I actually ended up walking away with about $55,000 in total scholarships from my state competition to the national competition. And so, thanks to that, I can officially say that I am debt free, which is a really, really big deal in my house. So, I'm very grateful for Miss Volunteer America, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to be pursuing a master's degree when my year is over as Miss Volunteer America. And so, thanks to them, that'll be possible. And there's so many opportunities that I've had as Miss Volunteer America thanks to Allison. So, a little background on Allison. Like I said, her name's Allison DeMarcus. She is the wife of Jay DeMarcus, and Jay DeMarcus is one of the Rascal Flats. Fun fact, they're going on tour again, if you're a big Rascal Flats fan out there. But Allison has been around the pageant world for many years, and so she had a big mission with a lot of goals in mind. And I think that there are so many people out there that have been rooting for her in this organization, and I was one of them. And so, to be a part of that and be one of her national title holders, I couldn't be more grateful.
Let me just, because as I said earlier on, Haley connected us, Haley Hurst, who is a current Miss Virginia volunteer.
Yeah.
And the reason that I got her to connect the two of us was because we touched briefly on it in her interview, but I want to get your opinion on this, because the service for me is hugely important. I almost think that's like one of the two primary roles of a title holder, is to actually go out there, give their time, give their energy, give their love to people who may not have received it or are not currently receiving it.
Right.
However, the issue that I have sometimes is if you just go that way and you forget the glamorous side of it, it's then very hard for people to get enthusiastic about it or to actually get the public's attention. And so this idea of service, but make it glamorous. I don't want to, put a silly catchphrase in there. But I think that what really I wanted to chat to you about was, it's a combination, it seems to me, with this pageant system, which is a newer system. It's combining the glamour with the service. How
Yes.
important has that been for yourself?
It's been everything to me, and it's one of the things that drew me to this program. And so, to think that there's four categories in the competition piece of it. So there's interview, talent, evening gown, and fitness and wellness. Fitness and wellness being, as a miss, you're competing in a swimsuit. And so, that's the old school pageantry that we all knew, right? Everyone was competing in swimwear and evening gown and the glamour and the lights and the
Mm,
runways. And Allison really did make that vision come to life. If you get to watch Miss Volunteer America, I highly recommend you do. That production is unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, just talk about having your moment in the spotlight. I mean, every little girl dreams of that moment. I know I did. I mean, when I was a little girl, I was watching TV thinking, I hope that's me one day. And I remember my mom looking at me saying, that will be you one day. And so, kind of special to think that the Miss Volunteer America stage had that moment for me. And it really does combine the elements of glamour coupled with the service. So, I'd love to kind of touch on the service piece of it. I mentioned earlier why I'm passionate about the service because of my dad, but I've become even more passionate through the years because of the things that are really close to my heart. And one of them, as Miss Volunteer America, I'm the national brand ambassador for the Salvation Army, as well as a national brand ambassador for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which fights childhood cancer. And so, those two organizations specifically, I've been able to volunteer with throughout the country. And so, that's been an incredible blessing of an opportunity to be a part of, and to witness so many young people getting involved, especially with our state title holders, seeing them getting involved and seeing
mm,
their passions because of the work that we're doing in these partnerships. It's really inspiring to see, because at the end of the day, there's a huge lack of volunteers. If you look at the numbers when it comes to volunteers, donors, people that are giving philanthropically, it's a higher age demographic, right? That's
mm.
that's our parents, our grandparents that are typically those givers, if you will. And so, we really need to inspire my generation, young people, to give back and understand that life is so much more than what you see on social media. We've got to be able to have that servant's heart so that we can ultimately invest in our future, because that's what these organizations are doing. They do it every single day, and the work that they're doing is phenomenal. And I truly believe that I'm a better person for seeing the work that they're doing and being a part of that. A lot of times it's not just what you give, it's that feeling that you get back that's even more special, even bigger than you could have imagined walking into that appearance.
I absolutely agree. I think sometimes if you're feeling a bit down or a bit blue, the best thing you can do is actually go and give to someone else. And that
Right.
might not be money, that might be your time. But when you give to someone who's less fortunate than yourself, I'm not dismissing, we all go through difficult times. But when you give to someone else, that's actually the gift in itself, because it helps you, it lifts you up.
Right.
You mentioned that a lot of the volunteers are the older demographic, and I think we touched on this with social media. I feel that a lot of service is not glamorous, and I'm not slagging that off at all. That's what it should be. It should be, you go there, you do the hard work. It's not about preening in front of social
Correct.
media. But is it perhaps you're struggling to maybe bring your generation into it? Is it partly because it's not glamorous, and maybe social media has made us the look at me generation, and there's a bit of that going on, and we'd rather do a fashion hall than go? I know that you went to a soup kitchen, I think it was in Harlem, for example, so I'd love to hear more about that. But do you think part of the reason that maybe the younger generation is not getting as into it is because it's not glamorous?
I think that, and also, unfortunately, my generation is focused on money. And
Mm,
you don't get paid for being at these places and doing the service, right? They don't. So there's a lack of understanding, I think, of what's really expected in these circumstances, and the fact that you really are giving your time and not getting
yeah.
anything in return financially is kind of a commitment. So I think there's kind of a lack of commitment in my generation to give your time. They'd rather either sleep in or catch up with their friends or whatever the case may be, spend time with family. I mean, there's some logical reasons for not wanting to spend time with people that you may not know, strangers, but again, once you do it, I promise there's so much value in being there, and you'll want to do it again and again and again. And for me, that's exactly what happened. Once I started serving, it was something that I never wanted to stop doing, and I won't stop doing even after my year as Miss Volunteer America is over. This is so much more than just a pageant title. I mean, the skills that you gain, the experiences you have, and the passions that you have aren't created because of Miss Volunteer America. They're created in you, and so being able to
Mm.
carry that over into your life, uh, post being married and having children, I want to invest that into them as well, because it's really changed my life.
If now we have the Salvation Army over here in Australia as well. We, being Australian, we call them the Salvos, because being Australian, the one thing you can't do is use a full word anywhere. So we call them the Salvos,
I
but
love
obviously
it.
we have the same organization over here. So let's make this practical. If there's someone watching this and they go, okay, sounds good, let me start volunteering. I have actually found that a lot of them don't know where to start. And I think doubly so, if there's a young woman watching, there's a bit of an issue, and I completely understand this, around safety. The last thing you want is for a young woman to go and volunteer somewhere and then have a negative experience or feeling where she doesn't feel safe. So, from your perspective, obviously having done this, if there's someone watching and going, okay, this sounds amazing, I want to give back, how would you advise them, given that, let's concentrate on the States, given that, assuming there's someone in the States, how would you encourage them to get involved safely?
So I would say go through the organization itself. So typically the organizations have a website, and so I'll use Salvation Army as an example. So salvationarmyus.org is where you can visit to find those volunteer opportunities. And so just go to the volunteer tab, and you'll be able to tap into your local community's Salvation Army, and there it'll list all the volunteer opportunities that are available to you, whether it's packing a food pantry or serving in a soup kitchen. There's so many different opportunities for you to give back. And again, I 100% understand the concern that could come up about safety. And so be sure that you register to volunteer with an accredited organization like Salvation Army so that you know exactly what you're getting into. You have a contact person and you know exactly the logistics of the event.
Can you walk us through maybe some of the stories that have come up whilst you've been volunteering? Because I feel like whenever I give of my time, you have certain, it's not all equal. Sometimes you have these moments when you really connect with someone and you hear their story
Right.
and you go, wow, I thought I had it tough. And like this person here has had things 100 times worse than myself. And it can
Right.
be very emotional and it can really change. I think it can, and I'll let you speak to this, but I feel it can really change you as a person because it changes your perspective on everything. So, have there been any moments where you've been particularly touched or any moments that were particularly memorable?
I can speak to several, but I'll keep it to a few. So the first one I'll say is at the Salvation Army New York. So I was there. You mentioned earlier I was volunteering at a soup kitchen in Harlem, New York, and so again, who gets that kind of opportunity? Not many people, especially someone from a small town in South Carolina. I never imagined I'd be serving over 400 people on the streets of Harlem. And so it was a moving day. I kind of mentally prepared myself for that, knowing what I was getting into for the day, but it you don't really know how you'll feel until
Mm,
the event is over. And I remember sitting on the subway reflecting on it, thinking, wow, the faces I just met, the people, the experiences, the children. It was a really moving experience to think that there's so many volunteers that give day in and day out to that population and that community. And one of them, you mentioned the impact that you'll remember forever. This is one of them. So this individual, I spoke with him for about 10 or 15 minutes. So it was a longer amount of time. It wasn't just like a hi and bye. And so we chatted, and he said that he actually was in that line when he found Salvation Army, and he'd never been to church. He had had a divorce. He had no contact with his children, and years later, he ended up serving in Salvation Army. It was because of a volunteer that he got involved. He got involved in the church. He got involved in serving other people. He ended up having a relationship with his wife, a relationship with his children. And so, even just being in the line of Salvation Army to get food day in and day out changed his life because of the people that he met and the volunteers. So, it just put into perspective to me as a volunteer how a couple of conversations could really make the biggest difference because it did for him. And it was a story that you can't even make it up because it
mm.
was so real and so true. And you could just see kind of the emotion in talking to this blonde girl from South Carolina that probably has no idea what he's been through in Harlem, New York. It really it really sunk in, and I understood why I was in this position. And he trusted me enough in that moment to share his life story with me. And it just goes to show how much giving back can do for someone. So that was one story that was really special. But I'll also touch a little bit on my trip to Memphis, Tennessee. So we actually got to visit the Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking Center. And so there I was able to see where women who unfortunately have been victims of domestic violence or human trafficking come. And so them being able to walk through the doors and have that safe space was, I didn't get to meet the women, but getting to see the space that they were provided was really special because it just goes to show how much Salvation Army really does treat them like family, and it really does feel like a home. And so that was a really special experience, and knowing just how many women are falling victim to that just in Memphis, Tennessee. I mean, the population served by Salvation Army in Memphis is astronomical. And so to think that I was a part of that day was really eye-opening for me because again, these populations that I'm speaking of, it was not something that is down the street from me in South Carolina. And
Mm.
so being able to travel the country as a national title holder, again, my experience growing up in a military family really prepared me for these moments because there's going to be days when I'm in Harlem, there's going to be days when I'm in Memphis, but then there's also going to be days when I have to leave that appearance and go to a fashion show. I mean, that was my experience in New York. I was at the Sherri Hill New York Fashion Week one night, and then the next morning I'm at the soup kitchen. So that's the life of Miss Volunteer America. And so I'm not saying it's an easy one by any means, but you definitely have to keep your emotions in check. And I am an emotional person, so I've really had to, believe it or not, I've really had to hone in on my emotions and understand that we have to treat each event as the event and not focus on what happened earlier, what happened later. We can reflect on all of that together later in the night, but just treat each event fresh. That's been a new thing for me to kind of adapt to as a national title holder, having so many different appearances throughout the country.
I need to touch on this sort of the emotional, to use a cliche, roller coaster, because I can't imagine what it would be like for a young woman coming from a small southern town to be, with Sherri Hill one moment and then the next moment working at a soup kitchen. I mean, that I've been through emotional moments in my time. I've attended some, business launches and things like that, and then had to turn around and I did some voluntary work at what we have here, which is Lifeline, where people who are suicidal and things like that can phone in. And so it's very jarring sometimes when one moment you're out celebrating and you've achieved something, let's say for yourself, or you're celebrating a friend who's achieved something, and then the next moment, as it was for me, you're on the phone and you're hearing this young woman basically afraid for her life. She's pulled over in her car. She's rung this hotline that I was volunteering at, and she's scared for her life. I mean, how tough is it to I don't know, is it even distancing yourself from the emotions? Is it having the emotional discipline? I mean, how did you deal with that?
I like the word emotional discipline. I haven't heard that one yet, so I'm going to use it. By the way, I'll have to take
Steal
note,
it.
but I'll steal it from you. Might need a little bit more of that, let's just say. But it's been hard for me because I really want to invest in those people, right? And for me, I invest with everything in me. Like I can't just go halfway in. I can't just be half in, half out. I want to be 100% present. And
Mm,
so being present is extremely important to me. However, I have to find a balance of when I leave, I can't still be thinking about Sarah or Joe or whoever I'm referring to. I kind of have to leave that where it was and know that in that time that I spent with, let's say, Sarah or Joe, let's hope and pray that I made that impact. Thank you, Jesus, for this opportunity to have been in that place with them. And now let's go to the next place. Because for me, that's been the best way to handle it. Because I remember being in Memphis and we had to leave the Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking Center and go straight to a photo shoot where we had
mm.
thousands of dollars of dresses in the back. I mean, I'll just be completely honest with you. And so in that moment, again, it's very descriptive of the job of Miss Volunteer America because we have incredible sponsors and glamorous moments that are so much fun to be a part of. And I'm so blessed to be a part of that. But we also have such a heart for what we do that we are going to be rolling our sleeves up and being in the community. We aren't just going to send a check and say we volunteered. No, we are doing the service, and I think that it takes a really tough mental health status, let's just say, emotional intelligence to really be able to
Mm.
handle those situations and handle them well. And I'm thankful that these experiences are teaching me more and more. I'll be honest, my first couple weeks as Miss Volunteer America, I didn't really know how to handle it. So I was at night. I mean, I remember being an emotional mess to my family, and I had so many things to say, and I was so invested in is that person going to be okay? How is tomorrow going to go? Is it going to work out with their family? I mean, I was still so invested in their life. And I remember my dad saying, Berkley, we've got to let it, like, we've got to leave that behind for today, and you've got
Mm.
to move on to the next moment because you have more lives to touch, you have more lives to impact. This is your job. Treat it like a job. And I think when I had that kind of talk, it put things into perspective, thinking, okay, I am Miss Volunteer America, this is my job, and I get to do this every day. What a blessing that is. And when I viewed it
Yeah.
like that, it was way easier for me to handle.
I think that's where your dad, perhaps having a military background, can really help, because obviously when it comes to military situations, sometimes you can't stay as long as you want, and sometimes you do have to leave certain situations behind. And I can understand that. Certainly, as I said, I volunteered at Lifeline, and after certain conversations, I basically felt useless. The
Right.
conversation might be 10 or 15 minutes, but it just takes the wind out of your sails, and really, really makes you think. But let me ask you this: given that you are jetting all over the place, going all over the place, and you're going through this emotional sort of roller coaster all the time, how do you give back to yourself? Like, how do you make sure that your cup remains somewhat full? Because at some point, if Berkley Bryant never gives back to herself, there's not going to be any more Berkley Bryant to go around. So,
You
how
want
do you
to,
actually look after yourself?
got to make sure there's enough to pour from, right? And you
Yeah,
can't pour from an empty cup. And
no,
so for me, I have to fill my cup somehow. And for me, that is talking to my family. So I mentioned the conversation that I had with my dad that one night early in my year. And when I had that conversation, it started kind of a routine for me, because I would call my family, and that's what family's for, right? I call
mm,
my family at the end of every day. I tell them everything that happened, and that's my release of all of the emotions, all of the feelings, all of the happy, all of the emotional, whatever it is. And so for me, that's kind of how I regroup for the next day, if that makes sense. And so
yeah.
when it comes to the travel, I will say, as Miss Volunteer America, I've gone over 20,000 miles at this point, I think. And so a lot of sky miles, lots of sky miles. I've learned how to sleep on a plane. And so that's where I get my Z's. The sleeps is going to be happening on the plane. Like, there's no holding back. I remember early on in my year, I was like, looking out the window, taking all the pictures, no, we're sleeping on the plane. We'll take pictures when we get there. So that's when that's when I get my sleep for now.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I'm a terrible sleeper and I can't sleep on planes. So it sounds like to learn how to sleep on a plane, I
You
just
would
have to
learn.
become a national pageant queen and be traveling 20 to give people an idea. Okay, so 20,000 miles. The Earth itself, I think I could be hopelessly wrong here, but in diameter, I don't think even the world is 20,000 miles. So what does your schedule look like? I mean, how often are you on
Okay.
a plane? I know Haley was talking about Amtrak and the train, and that's fascinating to me
Yes.
because we don't have that sort of system here. But what's a day? What does your week, or what is a month? God forbid, if I was to look at your calendar for a month, I mean, is it just all like chock a block
It's
full?
oh, it's crazy. I'll have to send you a picture after this. You should have seen
It might
September.
traumatize me. I sometimes I honestly I get off conversations and interviews like people like yourself and Haley, and I do feel like I'm not doing enough. I will say that, and it's
You
kudos to
are.
you guys because you do so much, and I just feel what, I should be waking up, let's say half an hour earlier or an hour earlier, and getting some more in, because I look at your guys like post-it notes or Excel spreadsheets, and it's like, I can't see any white space here. Like, what's that 5 minutes? Oh, that's when I get to sleep. But so
Right.
I interrupted you. So what does a week or a month look like for you?
So I'll give you a glimpse. So in September, I traveled. So a total of 15 states were traveled to and from by September. So in the months of July, August, and September. And so in September, I was in New York and then went straight to DC. From DC, went to Maryland. From Maryland, went back to DC. DC to Ohio. Ohio, home, I think. I think I went home, which is crazy. I went home. And then after that, I went to Wyoming, which was really, really cool. Amazing experience. So that's where a lot of the miles came in from my September trip, because I've never been that far west. That was the first time I'd gone that far west before. So really special. And then came back home to South Carolina. So that's a month time. And so I remember in July there was one week where I had been to like 5 or 6 states in terms of traveled through. But I remember it was, I think, the Alabama pageant, 2 pageants in Georgia, and then to South Carolina, then to Atlanta, Georgia, then to Virginia. That was like all in a week's time. So There's a lot of travel involved. I will say not every month as Miss Volunteer America is going to look like that. It's state pageant season, if you will, and so that's where a lot of this travel is coming from. I will say, so my only big trip of October is South Dakota, and so I've been pretty much South Carolina based for almost a week and a half, which is really good for me. Uh, you're dying laughing, which I think is hilarious. Um,
Berkeley, you've taken more flights in the past 3 months than I think I've taken in my entire
That was
life.
me. That was me. I'd never been on that many flights. My dad was a pilot, and I still hadn't been on that many flights. I mean, it's amazing to me. And again, it's because of Miss Allison, the Miss Volunteer America organization, these state pageants who want to have the national title holder. There's never even been a national title holder to visit Wyoming. That was a first in any
Right.
organization. And so, again, we're kind of paving the way. We're blazing a trail for Miss Volunteer America and who she is and that presence, and going places that Miss Volunteer America would never go. And so I'm going to South Dakota, I'm going to Wyoming, I'm going to these states that may have not met that national title holder and kind of need that
Yeah.
fire or that excitement kind of lit under them to see, okay, this is what I can be a part of. I want to be a part of that.
How many states at this point in the United States, how many states have you not visited yet?
I think I need to count again because I have the ones crossed off that I've been to. So that I don't know the answer to. Probably more than you think because I'm probably at about 25, 27 states that I've been to. So that's pretty good, I would say, but still a long way to go. I'm going to South Dakota, I'm going to Texas, I'm going to Hawaii. Those are kind of my next trips. I've never been to Hawaii. That's exciting.
That's so funny because that's one place I have been and you haven't been. That's so that's such a and I mean, how do you have any flight tips? I mean, how do you get through? Because I have several friends over in America who are always traveling for work and for fashion shows,
Yes.
and they get stuck in is it the TSA or something, and then the queue is like. Do you have any tips for us to get through and
Yes.
to survive all this flying?
Yes, get pre-check, get TSA pre-check. I got that too late, probably. A few flights too late, right? But I remember my first trip, my bag was overweight and I was so embarrassed. Of course, my bag was overweight, and I remember calling Allison, and she just laughed. Like she had the whole. You have to see our text messages back and forth, but it was very descriptive of Berkley Bryant in that moment. I'd packed way too much for like a very short amount of time, and so I have become a professional packer. Pack as much as you can in the carry-on because it'll make the big bag less heavy. And the sweet people in Mississippi, they're so precious. This was the state I was flying to. They sent back like 20 pounds worth of stuff because I think my bag was like 70 pounds. It was something ridiculous. And so, because I didn't have one of the weight things, that's another pro tip. Get one of the scales. It's like a thing that you
Yeah,
loop on your bag.
yeah.
Highly recommend. Didn't know about that. So those are some of my pro traveler tips. Now I guess I could be
Okay,
considered a
okay. I
pro.
get you didn't have one of those hand weight things, which I do have. But at some point, when you had this 70 pounds in your suitcase, when you went to lift it, didn't you think this is a little bit heavy? Did you not have to? I mean, 70 pounds is a lot.
It is a lot. I think it was 65. I think I might have exaggerated a little bit, but it's still very heavy. And I remember my dad thinking, because he was the one that put it in the car because I was coming from home. And he was like,
Right.
Berkeley, that is going to be overweight. I don't know how much it is, but it is going to be overweight. And I said, okay, well, I guess we're just going to have to figure it out when we get there. I don't know how that works, but yeah, I
I've
had a
been
suspicion.
I've been in queues where people have had their luggage overweight, and what they have to do is literally open up their suitcase in the airport, and because they're flying out of the country or out of the state, they literally have to start throwing their luggage into the bin because no one else is going to want it. So I certainly suggest, given that what you're traveling with is probably quite precious, I wouldn't be putting too much in because you might be having to throw some of that stuff in the
Right.
garbage bin. So you've learned to become a better packer. That's a good thing. how many flights did you say you've been on? It sounds like you. Oh, the other thing I wanted to ask, trains. Tell me more about Amtrak, because I don't know if you ever
Okay.
watched The Big Bang Theory, but
So
Sheldon
Miss
was so. Tell me about the trains.
Miss Virginia Volunteer is partnered with Amtrak. So when I went up to visit that state pageant, we actually visited the Amtrak station. So that was really neat to me. I also have never been on an Amtrak, so that would have been a unique experience for me. However, we missed the train, which was hilarious because Haley has since been on a lot of a lot of trains. Very descriptive, right? I mean, it was they had me in town, so it was a big deal. We had the national title holder. We needed to get all this content, and of course, we missed the train. And so we took pictures at the station, which was so fun. But since then, Haley has actually gotten to reap the benefits of that partnership, which is really cool. But yes, that is something that Virginia has, which I think is awesome. And there's a lot of states throughout the U.S. that kind of participate in the whole train thing, which I think is really cool. But right now, I'm getting around the whole country on a plane, so that's the game plan at the moment.
Wow. Okay. I mean, after all the work you've done, I feel like when you start doing service and you start meeting people, you hear their stories and you start getting a sense of some of the problems that we have in society that maybe, you're not aware of at the beginning. You feel like you always want to do more, right? You go as a volunteer at a soup kitchen and you're going, all these people need to be helped. Okay, how am I going to do that? So in terms of the next year, 2 years, 5 years. I know that you said you've got college to finish as well after your year as Miss Volunteer. I mean, what are some of the plans you have for yourself? Because I can imagine after all the experiences you have, there's a lot where you're going, actually, I could do this, I could do that, I could do more here,
Right.
I could do more. And how does your career fit into all of this, by the way?
So you make a good point in that there's always so much more that you can give, right? And so as Miss Volunteer America, I'm learning so much about some of the gifts and the talents and the skills that I have that I can then use to bless other people. That's my goal. And to be quite honest with you, in terms of a career, I don't at one time I thought I knew what that was going to look like. I'm only 4 months into my year as Miss Volunteer America now, and that's changed. I mean, just because of the experiences I've had, like you said, I mean,
Mm,
there's so much more that I can give. And not that this would have been a bad career by any means, and heck, I still might end up in it. But at one point, I wanted to go into pharmaceutical sales. I was in the sales innovation program. We were partnered with medical device companies, pharmaceutical companies, and that's a phenomenal career path in sales. But there's also so much more of me that I can give, and maybe it's that that's a career and I do other things on the side, whatever that looks like. But there's also so many people and connections that I'm making as Miss Volunteer America. A lot of the things that I'm doing are based in Nashville, Tennessee, so I'm spending a lot of time there. And honestly, the sky is the limit when it comes to career opportunities, so it's not something that's like right here in my brain, because there's so much of this year that I still want to give of myself. And so I knew I wanted to give 100% of Berkeley to this. And so the goal is by the end of my year, so in June, I will have that plan of where I'm going and what I'm doing. And the plan is to pursue my Master of Business Administration, whether it's online or at Clemson, whatever that looks like for me because of that scholarship money. And so I will go get my master's degree and ultimately probably also be working at the same time. And so that's going to be kind of what my life looks like after this. I think there's going to be a lot of soul searching done throughout this year, and knowing exactly where I'm meant to be. And I know for a fact that whatever it is, it's going to be because I'm where I'm meant to be and when I'm meant to be there, because that's how this journey came about. And look at me now. So it's crazy what when you put your mind to something, what you can get out of it.
I somehow think, I feel it's a premonition that by the time you get to the end of your reign, that you'll have more opportunities than you know what to do with. I don't think the problem for you will be deciding, like, what am I going to do? It'll be like, well, which one of these amazing opportunities do I want to pursue, or how many of them can I balance at the same time? I mean, I have pictures of you being, for example, like a board member on some of these nonprofits, because I think obviously you speak well, you've actually traveled to all these states. And you speak well. So I think having you as a board member on some of these nonprofits would be amazing. That's just where my tangent of thought goes at the moment.
I love
But
it.
what do you do in your spare time?
So like I said, dance was a huge part of my life. And so I actually taught dance throughout college. And so I love getting to visit the local dance studio and help out in classes. That's kind of a release for me. I love, again, investing in people is a huge, I just fills my cup. I love being a part of, especially young people. So
Mm,
getting to be around the little kids and helping them with dance is really cool. But I also love going to the gym. I love working out. It's a huge part of my life and always has been. I think that's the dancer in me. Just being active, especially since graduating college, kind of finding that new way of what does physical activity look like? Because I mean, I was
mm,
dancing for hours and hours every single week throughout college and high school. I cheered in high school too. So I was constantly active. And so going to the gym wasn't necessarily something that I had a ton of time for. I did it a little bit, but not a ton. And so kind of learning what that looks like. And thanks to some incredible people in my life, I've learned it's so much more fun than what people make it out to be. A lot of people treat it like a burden, something you have to do to look a certain way, but a lot of people have invested in me and taught me the right way to live healthily. And so, one of the people that have been a huge part of that is Morgan Morgan. So Morgan Morgan Fitness on Instagram. She has helped me tremendously, not just in pageantry. Pageantry gave me her, but she's prepared
mhm.
me for life. And even on the road as Miss Volunteer America, I certainly don't have as much time to work out as I did prior to traveling the whole country, right? I mean, hotel gyms are kind of here and there, maybe can hit them, maybe can't, but I really have been able to find a balance in what that looks like in my life. But I enjoy going to the gym and being active. It's kind of something that it will always be a huge part of my life.
I mean, you're traveling to and from so many states all the time. Talking about health, obviously, a part of that is what you eat. How do you indulge or not indulge when you're on the road?
Yes.
Is there certain food that you love eating and you
Oh,
find it
yes.
hard, or so? How do you
So
eat?
okay, the eating plan has also completely changed because a lot of things that I love, this is, people are going to make fun of me for this if they see it, but I everywhere I go, I bring my oatmeal, my tried and true blueberry oatmeal. So embarrassing, but I always have to have a microwave everywhere I go because I love this oatmeal. And if we don't have a microwave, that's okay. We can do a protein bar, but this oatmeal, I have an addiction. Like, it is 100% a fixation that I will stay on forever. Uh, so it's actually really healthy, but that's my go-to breakfast. Protein bars are a go-to. I like the Quest bars. Pop them in the microwave. Also really good. Tastes like a cookie. Pro tip. You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I know what Quest bars are here, and I do love them. I particularly love the I think there's a brownie one or peanut butter one, and the cookies and cream one. I
Cookies
love.
and
It
cream.
never occurred to me to put it in the
Do it.
microwave.
15 seconds. It'll change your life.
I'll try that after this. I'll go to the store, get one, and I'll let you know how it goes. Because I don't know, but please continue.
Okay, so those are always in my bag. In the purse, I'll keep snacks. I think just knowing that it's okay to have a treat is also something that I've had to learn because I'm a big sweet tooth. I love sweets. And so when I am with a state pageant director or they're taking me out to a nice dinner, I'm going to enjoy the dinner. Like,
Yeah,
there's no reason not to enjoy, right? I mean, I think a lot of
yeah.
times we have this restrictive mindset of, oh, I have a photo shoot tomorrow, or oh, I have this to, fit into, or whatever it is. Like, just enjoy the moments because I promise you that one meal is not going to change your look or change how you feel or whatever. So just enjoying it, and of course everything in moderation, right? But nothing crazy, but just trying to stick to as clean of ingredients as I can, but also sticking to a routine and enjoying the process.
I can't get Quest bars out of my mind now.
You've
I'm
got to do
just
the Quest bars.
I'm thinking of what's going to happen. I will do that. I will promise you that much. What I wanted to ask also, coming from South Carolina, you said that you lived in Texas for a bit. When I was in Texas, because I love traveling to meet people, not so much like buildings or famous places, but I like to meet people and also food. And so when I was in Texas, I asked people, what are some foods I should try in Texas? And someone suggested Whataburger. I think it was that. And I tried that. Wasn't a huge fan. It was a bit salty and greasy for me.
Okay.
But
Okay.
South Carolina, what foods is South Carolina known for? Because I know we talked about peaches. Texas is barbecue, so it's ridiculous
Yes.
how big, and it's amazing. What about South Carolina, though?
So have you heard of a low country boil?
No idea.
Okay, so a low country boil, that's again, it's by the coast. So it's got a lot of seafood. It's shrimp, it's got sausage, corn, and they cook it all in this big, I don't know what it's called. The boil, whatever they boil it in, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not the cook, right? But
Okay.
it's so good, and that's a very typical South Carolina meal. And they put it all out on these newspapers. You have to look up a picture of Low Country Boil, and you'll see people just spread out all this food over newspapers, and you just eat it off of the newspapers. It's
Oh,
pretty
wow.
funny, but anyway, Low Country Boil, and then I'm trying to think of other staple South Carolina foods, but that's a pretty notable one if you look that one up. And then
Okay.
in terms of the fast food element of things, have you heard of a cookout?
I've heard of a cookout. Isn't that on the back of like a truck or something?
No.
Okay, never mind. I need to learn more culturally, obviously.
So Cookout has a little bit of everything. They have like 500 different milkshakes you can choose from. It's a big late night spot. Kind of similar to like a grab and go from a food truck or something, but it's a real restaurant that you drive through. And so you can get a cookout tray with you can get quesadillas, you can get hamburgers, chicken sandwiches, hush puppies, French fries. Do you know what a hush puppy is?
My South Carolinian friend told me, and I forgot because a hush puppy is a brand of shoe. That's all I remember. I'm assuming you're not eating shoes.
Definitely not. It's fried bread. Not really my thing, my jam, but Cookout has them if you give it a shot.
Yeah, I'm hearing all this food and going, if I lived there, I think I'd put on 50 pounds in 5 days. It's a bit different to your blueberry oatmeal and Quest bars. We've got, I mean,
Right.
what did you say? Is it low country
Low
boil?
country boil.
That does sound more my jam, because over here in Australia, we're spoiled with seafood. And so I am a big seafood fan. And so if you can get that fresh and, have some nice sauces with it, that would be cool.
Yes.
I'm still thinking of the Quest bar, Berkeley. I still mind blown. We'll see how we go. But just before we move towards the final 10 questions, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to for supporting you?
Well, I want to thank my family because they are my rock, and we mentioned them earlier, so thank you to them. I want to thank the Miss South Carolina Volunteer Organization for believing in me and trusting me with the state title holder opportunity, because if it wasn't for that opportunity, then I wouldn't have become Miss Volunteer America. It really was a team effort to get here. It takes a village, as people say, and I certainly have one. So the whole South Carolina pageant family, that community, not even just the volunteer system, but all systems, they've really just watched me grow up on the pageant stage here. And so no matter what system you compete in, knowing that those relationships are there and knowing those people are out there listening and watching, it's really special to kind of be in this position and be able to thank them for believing and watching this journey. So thank you to everybody who's been a part of this.
And I should also ask, if there's someone watching this and they go, oh, that's an amazing system, I want to get involved, given they could be in any state in the country, what's the best way to get involved?
So you can visit missvolunteeramerica.net. And I also want you to follow us on Instagram because I'll give tons of updates there. So I run that account and it's at Miss Volunteer America Page, PAG. And so you can find us there and find all the information on how to compete for your state title. So
Mhm.
there's state pageants across the country. And so all you have to do is go to the website and find the title holder information tab. And so you can find out exactly how to register and what it takes to get involved.
Perfect. And the nationals are in June next year, I
Yes,
think.
they are in June. So June 18th through the 21st. We're so excited to crown our next Miss Volunteer America. Our state title holders are we already have so many joining the class of 2025. And so we would love to have you be a part of it if you're listening. It's truly changed my life. And I can't think of a better way to be a part of something bigger than yourself than to be a part of Miss Volunteer America.
And where's it going to be held, Berkley?
It will be held in Jackson, Tennessee at the Carl Perkins Convention Center. And so
Okay.
you can again find all the information on the location and how to get involved at Miss Volunteer America Page, PAG on Instagram.
Perfect. Will we be seeing the blue suede shoes making a return?
100%. I mean, we can't go a whole pageant week without seeing blue suede shoes again. So she'll be making an appearance for sure.
Perfect. All right, let's go through these final 10 to wrap up. So, number 1, what is your favorite word?
Passion.
What is your least favorite word?
Ooh. Moist.
The look on your face when you said that says it all. It's priceless.
I
All
like
right.
it.
Number 3, in life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
Achieving a goal. If I achieve a goal, then that gets me excited to set another one.
What turns you off?
No work ethic. If you aren't going to work hard, don't work for me.
Can see that one. What about number 5? What sound do you love?
Sound. Music in general. I'm growing up a dancer. Any kind of beat really makes me happy.
What sound do you hate?
Nails on a chalkboard, as cheesy as it sounds.
If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
Mind reading, for sure. I think it would just solve a lot of problems at the end of the day.
Every time I hear that one, I'm just like, are you sure? Are you really sure you want to know what some people are thinking?
That's true.
I think it might.
Wait, can I change my answer?
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
gonna go with flying. I want to be able to fly so that we don't have to spend so much money on travel.
You also wouldn't need to worry about how heavy your suitcase is.
Amen.
That could come in very handy. Okay, number 8. What job would you most like to attempt?
Job I would like to attempt. I'd like to be able to fly a plane. I'd like to be a pilot. I think that would be really cool.
Berkley, you haven't done this? Your father's a pilot. You've never flown a plane?
Absolutely not. You have to have a license. You have to go through the training. It would take a lot, but I think I could do it.
It's a lot of fun. I will say, as someone, this is a silly story, but when I was working as a tennis coach, I was talking about how much I loved planes and how much I wanted to learn to fly one. And the gardener who was a great person, we just spoke. I like speaking to people. I give everyone the time of day. I like having conversations. That's why I do what I do. He must have overheard this. And after I finished that lesson, he came on court and said, I got you a flying lesson. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, he had organized a flying lesson for myself with one of his friends who was slightly unhinged. He had this like 1960, 1970 Russian jet fighter. And so my first flying lesson was in a Russian, the engine was bigger than you can imagine. We turned upside down and you're only hanging in there by your seatbelt. And the cockpit, by the way, is rattling up and down. And because it wasn't like really an official thing, he says, you know how to fly a plane? I was like, I've seen it done. He goes, okay, do a barrel roll. So, oh my God, it's just the first time you go up. No, it's so much. You'll never feel more alive. Terrified, maybe, and you come back down with jelly legs. But I mean, your dad, you've got a shoe in there, so just get your dad to take you up. You'll be fine.
Work on
It's
it.
amazing. Highly recommend. Okay, so what job would you definitely not like to attempt?
Not like to attempt. Maybe a chef, because I cue the Quest bars in the microwave. Clearly, I'm not the best cook. Okay, and I also didn't know about what you cook the Low Country boil in. So don't let me be a chef.
Have you ever poisoned anyone? I mean, what's happened when you've tried to cook?
I just haven't tried that much. I mean, maybe I would be good at it, but like the effort hasn't really been there on my part when it comes to the cooking. So maybe I should do
Yeah.
a little more work on my end.
As soon as you said the microwave, I mean, I was a huge Gordon Ramsay fan growing up, and so you get all these glimpses into the professional kitchen. And put it this way, he doesn't think very highly of people who use the microwave a lot.
There's a
So,
lot of hate on the microwave, so I'll probably get some hate for that. I apologize.
you do whatever works for yourself. Final question: if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, my faithful servant, because I feel like at the end of the day, if I'm doing my job, which to me is to serve and bless other people as he would, then well done would be something I'd be really excited to hear him say. And I think that at the end of the day, not even just as Miss Volunteer America, just as Berkeley, I think that well done, my good and faithful servant is something that I would love to hear.
Well, Berkeley, it has been a privilege getting to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time coming on, and thank you for all the work you've been doing. It's been amazing getting to chat to you.
I know I really loved getting to know you, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and so excited to continue this relationship and appreciate all that you do too. So thank you.
I will keep you on the line for just a second whilst I hang up with the audience, but thanks to everyone for watching, and we will speak to you next time. Bye for now.